Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. Today we will be discussing disaster management from GS 3 topic, and the syllabus topic is disaster and disaster management. So we will be discussing 3 questions, 2 questions from this topic and 1 question from the current affair. So let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. First question is related to the forest fires, National Action Plan on Forest Fire 2018. The second question is related to the cyclones and NDMA guidelines in this regard. And the third question is related to the social entrepreneurship. So let's start with the first question. What are the factors responsible for the occurrence of forest fires in the various parts of India? This is the first demand of the question. What measures have been suggested by the National Action Plan on Forest Fire 2018 to deal with this? So this is the demand 2. So the body would be having 2 parts, demand 1 and demand 2. So in introduction, you can start this particular question with respect to the definition or the data. The definition of forest fire or the data with respect to the forest fires in India in particular last decade or last 2 to 3 years. So the definition is National Institute of Disaster Management defines forest fire as an unclosed and freely spreading fire that consumes the natural fuels. Natural fuels means the dry vegetation, leaves, etc., twigs or the other flammable material. Or with respect to data, that approximately 30% or more than 30% of the Indian districts are vulnerable or prone to the extreme forest fires. And the states which are mostly prone to the forest fire are Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Maharashtra. So this way you can start your introduction. So next comes the first body part, that is factors responsible for the forest fires. So there are particular 2 causes. First is the natural causes and the second is human causes. And in the human, we will again divide the human causes in the 2 parts, where the human directly is responsible for the forest fire or where human, due to the lack of management activities, the forest fire is happening. So the natural factor. The first one is climate change, climatic conditions and the weather conditions like dry winds, high temperature and low humidity. So this creates the favorable conditions for the forest fire to ignite and spread. The next is the fuel load. Fuel load means dry vegetation, dry vegetative cover, twigs or other flammable materials. These act as the fuel or the load to the forest fire. Then comes the lightning. The lightning during the thunderstorms can also ignite the forest fire. Then comes the human causes. The first one is the agricultural practices like the slash and burn cultivation. Then changing the land use patterns means diverting the forest towards the agriculture and then doing the activities like slash and burning agriculture. Then comes the lack of the forest management. What are the lack of forest management means? Forest management means how the forest would be managed. Like what should be the conservation efforts, what should be the prevention of forest fires. So the lack of the forest management, like absence or lack of fire breaks, lack of controlled burning, lack of or the delayed removal of the dry vegetative cover, etc. So these are some human activities. So let's come to the second demand of the question in the body part. So what are the guidelines given by the National Action Plan on Forest Fire 2018 to reduce the forest fire? The first one is the fire risk zonation and mapping. What does this mean? It means to identify the fire prone areas and doing the preventive measures over that particular area of the forest, so as to dedicate the management interventions over there, so as to take more and more precautionary measures in that particular area. The second is risk zones in the forest planning. Again, forest planning means the forest management, means the conservation efforts, forest fire prevention measures, etc. So the conservation strategies like removal of the dry vegetative cover, twigs, removal of the twigs, etc. So we have to identify the risk zone, map the risk zone, that what are the vulnerable areas, and do the preventive measures over that particular area. Then next is effective communication for the awareness. So educate people about the forest fires, about its effects of the forest fires, and about its impacts. Like any irresponsible behavior or any irresponsible activity, like just putting off the cigarette butt, so how it can cause the massive scale of the forest fire. So educate people, especially students, farmers, women farmers, etc. Then next comes the capacity building of the communities. Capacity building means to improve their skills to prevent plus control the forest fire. Capacity building of whom? Capacity building of the communities, of the people over there. Then next, increase the forest resilience. Forest resilience means so that the forest fire would have the very minimal effect over that forest, or preventing the forest on setting of the fire, like taking care of the moisture content, then water management, then biomass management, etc. Then next is enhancing the fire alert system using the satellites, the high-tech satellites. Then next is fire suppression training. Fire suppression training should be provided to the fire watchers, field workers, and the community firefighters. So these are the guidelines in this plan. So finally, the conclusion. You can write the summary about the importance of the forest and how to prevent them from the forest fires, or you can write some recommendations that forest fire should be recognized as the natural hazard. It should be allocated more funds for the mitigation, and forest fire should be included as a disaster under the National Disaster Management Authority, so that the legal framework would be provided, so that more resource allocation would be there to mitigate the forest fires impact, and many more, like the resource allocation, etc. So this way we have completed the first question. Let's see the model answer. Quoting some data regarding the forest fire, the factors responsible for the occurrence of forest fire, then National Action Plan, and finally the conclusion. So let's move on to the second question. With the frequency of the cyclones on the rise in the Indian Ocean, what measures can be taken to enhance the disaster preparedness and reduces its impact? So first demand is measures to reduce disaster's impact, or what should be the disaster preparedness measures. Also mention the National Disaster Management Authority's guideline in this regard. So the second demand would be NDMA's guidelines in this regard. So in introduction, you can write about the cyclone vulnerability in the Indian Ocean region. You can write about how the frequency and the intensity of cyclones in the Indian Ocean region is increasing. Now it's approximately 5 to 6 cyclonic storms per year. And you can also link it with that the increasing frequency and the intensity of the cyclone have the devastating impacts on the coastal communities as well as the infrastructure. Let's see the body first part, that is the disaster preparedness measures. The first one is cyclone hazard mapping. As we have seen in the forest fires, that first we have to identify the hazard prone areas, so as to deal with the interventions in the management as well as the allocation of the resources of that particular area. So the cyclone hazard mapping should be there. The next is land use planning. So the vulnerable areas or the regions should be evacuated And this region should be permanently diverted to the parks, grazing lands, and the flood diversion or the water diversion areas. So instead of habitation in these particular areas, it should be diverted to these domains. The next is early warning system. Timely and accurate information enables timely evacuation and preparedness. So the early warning system should be highly updated and high-tech. Then next is community training and awareness, so as to prepare the people of the coastal areas for the preparedness, evacuation, and also the survival skills. The next is capacity building. Capacity building of the local government, of national disaster management team, etc. so as to effectively deal with the disaster, like the regular mock drills or the training part. Then next is stockpiling the essential supplies like water, food, medical supplies, cyclone shelter material. Then next is critical infrastructure, resilient infrastructure. It means building and retrofitting the critical infrastructure in those communities or the coastal areas like the power grids, so as to minimize or so as to protect from the negative impact of the cyclone, like protect the power grids, like build the critically infrastructure very resilient, schools, transportation, hospitals, cyclone shelters, etc. Then next is flood control. So the coastal areas get inundated with the flood water during the storm surge. So there should be some diversion of the water, like the drains should be capacitated enough so as to maintain the flow of the water, first one. And also we can make the natural barriers like the mangroves protection. And the human barriers means the artificial barriers like the embankments, sea walls, etc. so as to protect the coastal areas from the flooding water. Next comes the NDMA guidelines in this particular regard. The first one is NDMA says or suggested or given the guidelines that there should be the early warning system. So Indian Meteorological Department has already operationalized cyclone warning dissemination satellite, so as to give the timely and accurately warning or the alert. Then NDMA says that there should be the Doppler's radar use, so as to timely detect and monitor the cyclone path, so as to take the evacuation and preparedness methods. Then next is there should be establishment of aircraft probing of cyclone facility, so as there should be the monitoring of the cyclone from the above and monitor the upper cyclonic conditions. Next is commissioning of national disaster communication infrastructure, so as to improve the communication lines during the disaster time. So there should be the national disaster communication infrastructure at NDMA, Ministry of Home Affairs, SDMA, in coastal states and UTs. Next is ensuring the structural safety. Structural safety as means critical infrastructure should be safe, cyclone shelters should be established. Next is infrastructural development. Infrastructural development means the establishment of embankments, sea walls should be there, the cyclone shelters to be there, and the path or the transportation facilities from the habitation to the cyclone shelters should be there. All weather roads should be there, and all weather drains and the canals should be there, so and their capacity should be maintained so as to release the water flow during the storm surge. So these are some infrastructural developments. Then finally conclusion. In conclusion, you can write the summary that to effectively mitigate the impact of the disasters, the multifaceted approach is required for the disaster or the cyclone mitigation. India has already come up with National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project in collaboration with the World Bank, and it shows that India's preparedness and resilience to cyclone and also to the other natural disasters. So this way we have completed our second question. Let's see the model answer. Again, the data in the introduction, measures to enhance the disaster preparedness, and finally NDMA guidelines in this particular regard. In conclusion, about National Cyclone Risk Mitigation Project, India in collaboration with the World Bank. Let's move on to the third question. What is the social entrepreneurship? How can social entrepreneurship contribute to mitigating the livelihood crisis in India? So, this question has two parts, the definition of social entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship role in mitigating the livelihood crisis. So first you should know what are the livelihood crises existing in India, then how social entrepreneurship plays a role in this. As this is a 10-marker question and the question is explicitly asking about the definition, so you can directly start in introduction. What is social entrepreneurship? So social entrepreneurship is when people uses their business skills and principles in solving the social and environmental problem. So the aim is to create the positive impact in the world. So they come up with the innovative solutions for the social problems. So via mobilizing the resources at low cost. Do not confuse with the NGOs, with the social entrepreneurs. NGOs are non-profit organizations or the non-governmental organizations. But these are for-profit enterprises. And they can run their operations with their own funds or by mobilizing the funds. With the existing high-tech knowledges, and also governmental initiatives like rapid digitalization. So these facilities have facilitated their innovative efforts. So let's move to the body part. Livelihood crisis in India. Out of 90 crore working age adults, only 41% are employed or seeking for the work. So others are either unemployed or low skilled or working in the informal sector or daily wages, underpaid, etc. Then next is labor force participation rate for the women is approximately 32%. So it's very low as compared to the other developed nations. So 90% of the India's workforce is in the informal job sector. So no job security, labor discrimination, etc. Then rural-urban migration is there. Approximately 80 million rural-urban migration is there according to the 2011 census. And more than 200 millions are in the multidimensional poverty. So these are some livelihood crises. We need to show that how these livelihood crises can be solved by the social entrepreneurship. Means what is the role of the social entrepreneurship in employing these unskilled workers, how they will give the skilling or imparting the knowledge to them, how they will make the resilient communities and how they will make empowered informal sector, etc. Now let's come to the first part, that is the social entrepreneurship's role in mitigating the livelihood crisis. First is via upskilling the vulnerable communities. Upskilling, so by imparting skills, by giving knowledge. So upskilling via technological led means market led technology and related information. So what the market is requiring. So giving them knowledge, imparting them skills according to the demand of the market. Like Lighthouse Communities Foundation is providing the foundation course, also the advanced course in imparting the skills and also making them aware of the market know-hows. The second one is strengthening the informal sector by providing the financial avenues so that they can generate their own businesses or the entrepreneurships. Like Ujjivan's microfinance and the financial inclusion promotion. The next is empowering the self-reliance. Means empowering the vulnerable communities and making them self-reliant, like by imparting the skills, by imparting knowledge, by making them self-reliant to create, produce or generate the jobs, or to pursue the profitable streams. You can give the very good example of Sulabh International. Mr. Bindeshwar Pathak, the toilet man of India, he has not only promoted the sanitation and the hygiene practices, but he has also empowered the community. Like he has rehabilitated the manual scavengers. He has given the vocational training to them. He has provided the alternative sources of livelihoods for them. You can also give an example of the Karigar clinic. These clinics provide the training or the skills to the artisans. Then next is addressing the information asymmetry. Means it bridges the gap between the farmers and the market. Like it makes the farmer the technologically advanced. Like it provides the AI chatbot. Example is Graham Hull Foundation. Graham Hull Foundation. It means the solution for the Graham village problems. Like this AI chatbot provides the information about what the market is giving, the prices for that particular crop, weather-based crop advisories. It also provides the interaction between the different farmers and various other parts like what the crop health is, crop advisory, etc. So this is the role of the social entrepreneurship in mitigating the livelihood crisis. Next comes the conclusion. So you can write the summary that yes, social entrepreneurship has the potential to mitigate the livelihood crisis in India, but it requires the targeted interventions from the government, skill development facilities and inclusive financial initiatives also. So this empowers the individuals, the fosters self-reliance on those people and creates the lasting impact in the vulnerable communities. So let's see the model answer. The social entrepreneurship, some flowchart. Definition of the social entrepreneurship, livelihood crisis and methods how the social entrepreneurship can help in mitigating the livelihood crisis. And finally, conclusion. So this is it for today. Thank you and have a nice day.